So when I was in high school, I used to go to my church's youth group, and as I proceeded to go into high school, I realized that my better friends were at church than they were at school. And so there was one weekend where we were with my youth group, and someone offered to go up to their cabin. And so a bunch of us went to their cabin to play in the snow. It was in Minnesota in the winter. And one of the people that was going there was one of our students, Swedish exchange student that lived with their family. Her name was Annika. And she was Swedish, and I'm Swedish, and I think we had a connection. It wasn't just that she was beautiful. So I kind of had this crush on this girl, Annika. And so I would tell my best friend Nick about that, and I'd be like, yeah, I really like her, and we would talk at youth group. So we go away to this weekend, and I'm just really excited about it. We're playing in the snow and stuff like that. During the weekend, Annika, goes to my friend Nick, and just they're hanging out in the snow somewhere, and she's just like, in Sweden, we just kiss a lot. And so if you wanted to kiss me, you can. So my friend Nick thinks to himself, he's like, this Swedish girl is asking me to kiss her. And I wasn't dating her at all, so it wasn't like this had been wrong, but my friend Nick knew kind of that I liked her. And so he resisted and said, you know what, my friend Chad, I don't know if he said whatever he said, but he just kind of resisted and ran away from that. So when we got back into town, Nick tells me the story of that and says, yeah, she really wanted me to kiss her, and I didn't. And I was really impressed by that. I had not known friendship like that ever before. A friend who was willing to be faithful to me, not because he had to, but because my friendship with him was more important than just whatever. This chance at maybe, getting a girlfriend or something like that. And I gotta say, my friend Nick has held that against me for the rest of our lives. He's like, remember? And so I have not lived that down. But you know what? I still remember it vividly. This faithfulness that my friend had to me. Faithfulness. This is a great word. How to be faithful to someone. Because in a lot of ways, being faithful to someone is usually when you're not right in front of them. When you're not looking at them face to face, because that's when it's real easy to be faithful, because you remember and all of these things. But then when you walk away, that's when faithfulness is important. We're going to start a series on Hosea, the book, Hosea is the first of the minor prophets. In case you're wondering what a minor prophet is, it's not someone who's underage, because that would be a minor, get it? And it's not someone who digs for gold, because that's also a minor, get it? Yeah, they get worse. This is the minor prophets, which actually all it talks about is 12 books of the Bible in the Old Testament, which are shorter than the major prophets. So Hosea starts out 12 books, and it happens to be the biggest one. There's two that are 14 chapters long. So Hosea is 14 chapters of this guy writing who is a prophet, trying to communicate what God is trying to say to his people. So my challenge for you is to read through Hosea as we study it. And as we teach about it the next few weeks, I want you to understand this book. We're going to land today on the first chapter, but if you read through it, all 14 chapters, it's going to take you about a half an hour. I timed myself this week, and I'm a pretty slow reader. So if you're a fast reader, it's going to be less than that, but there's some good things. And as a matter of fact, the more I've been studying it, the more it's kind of come alive for me. In kind of a new way. I kind of thought it was going to be this way, and it's really gone a different way. So let's start by reading just the start of chapter 1 in Hosea. The Lord gave this message to Hosea son of Beeri during the years when Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah were kings of Judah. Jeroboam son of Joash was king of Israel. So right off the bat, there's two kingdoms. Israel has kind of split off into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and they're trying to follow God, but there's a lot of confusion on how to do that. How do you become a political power while at the same time being followers of God? We still struggle with that, right? How do you become a holy nation? What does a holy nation look like? Is there such thing as a holy nation? Well, Israel and Judah were trying to figure that out. And in order to figure that out, God would send prophets to speak through him, or to speak through them in the words of God. So, Hosea is that guy. Continuing in verse 2. When the Lord first began speaking to Israel through Hosea, he said to him, "Go and marry a prostitute, so that some of her children will be conceived in prostitution. This will illustrate how Israel has acted like a prostitute by turning against the Lord and worshiping other gods." I bet you didn't expect that. So right away, my mind goes into this vivid imagery of this word that conjures up a lot of emotion. A lot of kind of this way that we sometimes label people, and we set them apart, and we cast them aside. The Bible's filled with people who are lepers. Oh man, they're unclean. We don't know what to do with them, so we'll set them outside. The prostitutes, the tax collectors, the Pharisees, all of these people that Jesus was dealing with in the New Testament, they existed long before, because we sometimes like to feel like we're better than other people. So then I started thinking about this. God is commanding Hosea to marry a prostitute. How would that look? Like, how would he find that person? Does it start right there where he's like, okay, well, I better go down to that area of town where I can find this? But the more I thought about it, the more I was reading this, the more I thought about maybe Hosea was already doing the work of God. He was already into those places where no one wanted to go. Because remember this, in Jesus' life, he was hanging out with those people. And they made fun of him for it. What if Hosea was already working with some people? Already building relationships. Already there and kind of feeling God leading them, like, wow, this is great. This person is loved by God. Cherished by God. And he knew a lot of people. And then God says to him, hey, I want you to marry this person. And maybe at some point it was just like, Hosea's like, wow, great. Like, because I know, like, religiously, it's not a great thing to do. It's kind of shunned, like, wow, you try and stay away from people who are anything like sinners. You just go and marry righteous people. The more holy you are, you have to find someone that's holy like you. And what if this person, Gomer, that's what her name is. It's a beautiful name. What if she's been, like, put in this world, not by her choice? What if it's been a hard life for her, and she's just trying to feed whatever, her family, whatever it is. Maybe this is the only life she knows. Maybe it's not even her choice, which is probably the case. And then this guy, this prophet of God, says, you know what? I don't care where you've been. I don't care what you've done. Will you marry me? Whoa. This unfaithfulness doesn't matter. It's this promise of, hey, I want you to be in a faithful relationship with me. That's what this prophet is saying to Gomer. Can you imagine that? And then especially as you realize, oh, not only is he offering me the safer world, this nice place to live, this kind of boost in my life, to be loving. Oh, he's a prophet of the Lord. Isn't that so cool? When you think about it that way, what something that we can do as followers of Jesus to lift someone out of their place, to show them the love that God has for them. I just love that. So as we continue on, it says, so Hosea married Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she became pregnant and gave Hosea a son. And the Lord said, name the child Jezreel, for I am about to punish King Jehu's dynasty, to avenge the murders he committed at Jezreel. In fact, I will bring an end to Israel's independence. I will break its military power in the Jezreel Valley. Soon Gomer became pregnant again and gave birth to a daughter. And the Lord said to Hosea, name your daughter Lo-ruhamah, not loved. For I will no longer show love to the people of Israel, or forgive them. But I will show love to the people of Judah. I will free them from their enemies, not with weapons and armies or horses and chariots, but by my power as the Lord their God. After Gomer had weaned Lo-ruhamah, she again became pregnant and gave birth to a second son. And the Lord said, name him Lo-ammi, not my people. For Israel is not my people, and I am not their God. Okay, so here we are. We have 3 children to illustrate 3 different levels of the relationship of God and his people. And I was kind of thinking about this. Not many times in the Bible do we see the emotions of God as vividly as we do in the book of Hosea. It's really kind of cool. I kind of sometimes wonder about that. Because as Hosea is writing this down, he's really kind of communicating some words about God that really are not easy to hear. Sometimes we like to position God and say, hey, God is always good. And we sing about that. And he's always loving. And he always gives me what I need because he's a God who likes to bless us. But then here you see in this story where, man, sometimes people are being unfaithful. These people who God has said, this is my chosen people, have gotten carried away in the politics and the power of their time. And so he says, I want you to name your kids symbolically after 3 people. After these 3 events. One is Jezreel. Jezreel is this valley where God is going to say, hey, I'm going to stop this military power that you have. Then he says, name your daughter Lo-ruhamah, not loved. Because God is going to somehow at some point say, I don't love you anymore, and I'm not going to treat you like people who are loved. It's kind of harsh, right? Especially if you're that girl named Lo-ruhamah. And then the last one is Lo-ammi, not my people. So if you think about this, there's this journey that these people of God are on. And God has blessed them and brought them together, brought them out of slavery, redeemed them, said, hey, this is my chosen people. And then life goes on, and they get carried away a little bit, and they get more caught up in power than they do in following God. I've always thought about this, that when God says, this is my chosen people, sometimes we as humans kind of say, I'm God's chosen. And I can have more power than other people. And then I will be exalted, and I will be better than other people. When really, I think, if you go into the story of the Bible, God is saying, when you're my chosen people, I want you to be the ones who live out faithfully to me. I want you to be loving people who are unlovable. I want you to go out and give hope to people who don't have hope. I need you to surrender your lives, maybe even your power, maybe even your own family relationships so that you might serve me. That's what it means to be chosen. And yet sometimes we get caught up in our own selfish needs, in our own selfish ways, and we try to exalt ourselves above other people. Well, that's what Hosea has to speak into, because these people are lost. And God sadly has to say, you know what? I got to step in. I'm going to break up this power that you have. I love you. I like to bless you, but it's not going very well. And you've lost sight of me. And you know what? Isn't that true in our own lives sometimes? We forget about God's goodness and what He's done in our lives, and we kind of slowly drift away. And we drift away. And we drift away. And we get caught up in maybe that job that God gave us that was an answered prayer, and then we forget, like, oh wow, I still need God every day. And we get distant. And we become unfaithful to God. And so then God says, the second level is this place where I want to love you, I want to give you things, I want to cherish you, but you're not even giving me credit for the love that you give to me, or that I give to you. And so I'm going to have to start treating you as people who are not loved. I can't forgive you for these things, but I want to. I want to love you. Well, I relate to that as a parent. Sometimes it's really hard to deprive my kid of dessert or something that I really want to give to them because they're begging me. Oh, my daughter Elsa, she just looks at me and says, Daddy, oh, maybe just a little bit more. And I'm like, oh, I want to so bad. But I know that I have to be a parent. I have to look out for her best interests. God's having to do that too. And I love just the way this is spelled out. Like where God is saying, I can't even love you, my people. I can't treat you the way I want to treat you because of your unfaithfulness. And lastly, it gets real extreme. He says, Lo Ami, where you are not my people. So you see this level of this power, and they've gotten caught up, and they start worshiping other people, other gods. Then they get further away, and they're not even loving God. And so God's like saying, well, I can't even love you back. And then he gets to this place where God doesn't even know them. They're not his people. I sometimes feel like life is this big journey. And we're on this long journey to this destination, and sometimes we just pick the wrong way to go. We start heading off, and we're like, wow, you know what? My goal is to be wealthy. And there's good things that happen from that. Wow, I have a good job. Oh, wow, I've been able to give things away. I'm able to be generous. And your goal is to be wealthy, and you finally get there. And then you realize, wow, this is it? How come I'm not fulfilled? How come I'm not complete? I always just am perplexed at how many times that happens in the news when some rich celebrity is miserable. They can't find the answer to it. They're the richest people we know, and yet they're not happy. They're looking for something more. That's that journey we're on. Because if you're looking for wealth, if you're looking for things that aren't only God, you're going to go in the wrong place. And then there's other times when we know where we're supposed to go. We know that God is the answer, but when we get down into the day-to-day life, we forget where to go. We forget to take that path and see, like, oh wow, I'm going there. I always love to talk about Bear Grylls. Do you know Bear Grylls? So it's a show, Man vs. Wild, and it talks about how to survive. And one of the things that happens is when you get underneath the trees and you don't know where you're going, you naturally kind of curve around in circles. Like it's really hard to stay straight. And so what he'll do sometimes is if there's tall trees where you can't see and you can't find like a high point, he'll tie his shoelaces together and he'll start climbing to the top of the tallest tree that he can find. And then he'll keep doing that so that he can see a point. And he'll pick that destination off in the distance, that mountain, that's that peak, and he's like, okay, I'm heading toward there. And then every so often he's like, oh, it's over here now. Okay. Oh, it's over here now. Sometimes we need a reminder, this objective way of saying, where is it that God is leading me? And it's not as easy as a a destination, like on a hike. Sometimes in the spiritual world, we have to remember, like, what is it that God is saying? Where's this place that I'm going? And you know what? The best place to do that is reading the Bible. Reading the Bible together as a community, being in community with people, being open, being able to say, wow, this is where I'm sinful, and I need help in this. Worshiping God, singing out to God, that is a great way to kind of go, oh wow, God, I have been so selfish lately. I need to figure out a way to let you back into my life. Because on a personal level, God is faithful to us. But when we stop that faithfulness, it starts happening when we start getting a little bit worried about our own lives. Jim said that last week, where selfishness is the root of all worry. And I know that hit a lot of people hard. We can't worry, because that shows that we're not trusting in God. And then when we give our lives to God and say, well, I guess I'm going to do this, you realize, wow, God has a great plan for you. This great journey to take you on. But when we get caught up, we start worrying about things of this world, money, just relationships, the place, like being better than other people, and we start fading away from God. And then all of a sudden we don't love God in our actions. We don't worship God in all that we do. And then God is like, wow, I can't love you back and treat you as forgiven because you're not even repenting. You don't even know what you're doing is wrong. You don't even care about me. So much to the point where your life does not reflect being a child of God. Well, luckily, there's more to this chapter. In verse 10 it says, "Yet the time will come when Israel's people will be like the sands of the seashore, too many to count. Then at the place where they were told, 'You are not my people,' it will be said, 'You are children of the living God.' Then the people of Judah and Israel will unite together. They will choose one leader for themselves, and they will return from exile together. What a day that will be, the day of Jezreel, when God will again plant his people in his land. In that day you will call your brothers Ami, my people. And you will call your sisters Ruhamah, the ones I love." Isn't that great? Because in the midst of this, there's a couple things going on. This way that God is having that relationship, where he's faithful to us even when we're not faithful to him. And then he remembers his covenant with us. This promise that we can never be separated from him. This promise that he made to Abraham at the beginning of time, where he said, you know what? You will have children and descendants that will outnumber the sands on the seashore. Vivid imagery. And so at this time when God is understanding, or just knowing exactly where we're at, knowing how unfaithful we have been, knowing how we go off and worship other things that are not God, where we're afraid to follow what God is asking us to do, that's when God says, you're still my people. You're still loved by me. And I need you to be connected to me. And to start living faithfully. Living faithfully in a way that is exactly what reflects what God is asking us to do. You see, when I understood this faithfulness that my friend Nick had for me, it really changed my life. It made me realize that, wow, there's someone who cares about me even when I'm not there. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to start living faithfully to others. When you picture marriage, the best marriages are the ones where people are faithful to each other. And sometimes it's hard because you can't control the other person. You have to trust. But all you can do is live faithfully for them. And it's a very vulnerable place to be. I remember when I first said that I loved my wife. We were dating and we had taken a trip, and I said, I think I'm in love with you. And I say, hey, Erin, that's when I confess my love for you. And she's like, you said I think you're falling in love with me. So she doesn't give me credit. But her response, I'll never forget, was she goes, thank you. That's it. So she didn't want to just say the words back to me. She wanted to make sure that she really did love me. And you know what? That even made a lot of sense to me. And then she did eventually, thank goodness. But she realized, she did love me back. But man, when you say I love you to someone, it's a very vulnerable position to be in. Because I wanted her to love me back so bad that I can't speed that along. That's what God deals with all the time. He allows us to do what we do. He doesn't use power to direct our steps and to zap us down, but he could, right? We believe that he has more power than anything ever and ever will. And that's good to remember. But at the same time, he allows us to wander off, to go our own little ways. But he loves us and he wants us so passionately to be his people. To be loved, to be forgiven. And he offers to us, his unfaithful people, this marriage. This powerful image that Jesus uses to describe him and the church. What? This unfaithful people, these people who keep forgetting about him over and over again. We live our own ways. We sin every week. We do all these things. We just forget about God. We forget to read the Bible. We just ignore the creator of the world. And yet he offers us his faithfulness. This marriage. This perfect description of this redemptive love that we don't deserve. Isn't that great? Love that. So we're going to continue to read through Hosea. So read through it as much as you can as we talk about it. But the imagery that Hosea uses is so good. There's just some things that just stand right out, and just meditate on it. I've just really enjoyed just kind of getting into this chapter 1, just because, wow, God is speaking through Hosea to his people. And yet it really hits me now about how faithful God is. And this challenge that when I understand God's faithfulness, that inspires me to want to be faithful back. Let's pray.